You already know the answer, or at least you think you do. Somewhere in the back of your mind, there is a version of this question you have already settled. Maybe you believe in something after, a continuation, a light, a return to something greater. Or maybe you believe in nothing, a switch turned off, a screen going dark, the clean silence of a machine that has simply stopped running. Most people, when pressed, land in one of these two camps. They feel certain. They feel at peace with their answer. But here is what almost no one considers. Both of those answers are built on the same hidden assumption. They both treat you as a thing that ends. Carl Sagan did not think in those terms. Not because he was naive, not because he was searching for comfort, but because he had spent decades staring into the deep structure of the universe and had arrived at something far more unsettling and far more beautiful than either heaven or oblivion. He had arrived at a description of death that is not poetic in the way inspirational quotes are poetic. It is poetic in the way mathematics is poetic. Precise, inevitable, stunning. What actually happens when you die is not a spiritual question dressed in scientific clothing. It is a structural fact about the nature of matter itself. And once you understand it at the scale Sagan understood it, you will never be able to think about yourself or your life in quite the same way again. The problem with human intuition is that it was never designed for cosmic scales. Our minds evolved to track predators across a savanna, to remember faces, to anticipate seasons. We are extraordinarily well calibrated for distances of roughly 1 to 1,000 meters, for timescales of hours to decades, for objects between the size of a pebble and a mountain. Beyond those ranges, either direction, our intuition begins to quietly hallucinate. We cannot feel a billion years. We cannot sense an atom. We cannot intuitively grasp that the chair you are sitting on is almost entirely empty space, that the solid world is an illusion of scale, that the boundary between you and the air around you is, at the subatomic level, a negotiation rather than a border. This is where Sagan begins, not with death, but with matter. Because before you can understand what happens when you die, you have to understand what you actually are. Not what you feel like, not what your identity tells you, but what you are made of, structurally, at the level where physics does not compromise. And at that level, the answer is both humbling and astonishing. You are the universe temporarily organized into a pattern that can ask questions about itself. The implications of that sentence take time to fully arrive. Start with the most basic movement. The atoms in your body are ancient, not old in the way a cathedral is old, ancient in the way that strains the word itself. The carbon in your cells was forged inside stars that died billions of years before the sun existed. The oxygen you are breathing right now was released into the cosmos by nuclear reactions so violent, so total, that no human analogy comes close. The iron in your blood traces a lineage to stellar explosions, supernovae, that scattered their contents across the galaxy like seeds thrown into wind. When Sagan said we are made of star stuff, he was not being romantic. He was reporting a chemical fact. The atoms in your left hand may have passed through a dozen stars before finding their way into you. They have been part of rocks, oceans, bacteria, dinosaurs, ancient forests, and river sediment. They arrived in your body recently, on a cosmic timescale. The way a tourist arrives in a city, briefly, incidentally, and with every intention of moving on. Here is the unexpected consequence of this fact. You have never owned your atoms. You are borrowing them, every single one, and the moment you die, the loan comes due. This is not metaphor. This is thermodynamics. Now go deeper. Consider what the body actually does during a lifetime. You are not a static object. You are a process. Most of the cells in your body are replaced within years. The atoms in your bones are exchanged over months. The molecules in your brain shift continuously, even as the patterns they form. Your memories, your personality, your sense of being a continuous self, remain remarkably stable. You are less like a sculpture and more like a river. The water changes constantly, but the shape of the current persists. What we call a person is not a collection of matter. It is a configuration. An information pattern held together by biological chemistry, sustained by energy, maintained against entropy through constant metabolic effort. And this is where Sagan's thinking becomes genuinely radical. If you are a pattern rather than a substance, then death is not the destruction of matter, because matter cannot be destroyed. Death is the dissolution of a pattern. The atoms do not go anywhere. They disperse. They re-enter cycles. They begin new configurations. The matter that was you continues, reorganized, into soil, into water, into microorganisms, into grass, into other animals, into air breathed by people who will not be born for another 200 years. The river does not end. It widens. It loses its banks. It becomes the sea. But here is where the third movement arrives, and it is the heaviest of all. Memory. Not your memory. The universe's memory of you. Every interaction you have ever had has left a physical trace. Every word spoken has caused vibrations in air that propagated outward in all directions. Every decision you made altered the configuration of matter around you, slightly, irreversibly, permanently. See, the people you loved are neurologically changed by having known you. Their brains are physically different because you existed. The children they have or will have carry patterns of thought and behavior that would not exist without the particular shape your presence pressed into their lives. This is not comfort-seeking philosophy. This is how causality works in a universe where nothing happens in isolation. In physics, the word we use is entanglement. So every event is connected to the events it caused, and those connections do not vanish. They propagate forward through time, growing quieter with each generation, but never reaching zero. Sagan understood this not as immortality in the traditional sense, not as survival of consciousness, but as something structurally more real than that. The universe does not forget. It cannot. Every cause is permanently woven into the fabric of what comes next. You will be forgotten by people, certainly. Your name will be lost. Your face will disappear from every photograph. But the causal signature of your existence, the specific ripples your presence sent through the physical and social world, those do not disappear. They continue, changed in form, quieter in signal, but present. You are writing on water, yes, but water holds the shape of what moved through it, however briefly, and carries that shape forward into everything it touches. Now let us confront the objection. Because you may be thinking, this is beautiful language dressed around a cold fact. You are still dead. Your consciousness ends. Whatever happens to atoms and causal ripples, the thing that feels like you, the awareness, the inner voice, the subjective experience of being, that ends. And no amount of cosmic perspective changes the fact that the person reading this will one day simply not exist. Isn't all of this just an elaborate way of avoiding that? It is a serious objection. Sagan would not dismiss it. He was not a man who offered false comfort. He looked directly at the darkness and did not flinch. He acknowledged that science offers no evidence for the continuation of consciousness after death. None. He did not pretend otherwise. What he refused to do was conclude that this fact makes existence meaningless, not because of faith, but because of proportion. The argument that life is meaningless without an afterlife is a very human argument, which is to say, it is an argument built at the scale of a human lifetime, for a human audience, inside a human culture. It treats meaning as something that must be stored somewhere, preserved, witnessed, remembered in order to count. But the universe does not operate on that logic. The nova that seeded your atoms with carbon did not require an audience. The 4 billion-year process that produced the first cell capable of reproduction was not less significant because no one observed it. Significance, at cosmic scale, is not about being remembered. It is about having happened. You happened. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, everything. Here is the reframe. What if death is not a failure of existence but the mechanism that makes existence coherent? A universe in which nothing died would be a universe in which nothing changed. The atoms would settle into configurations and lock there forever. There would be no stars, because stars are only possible because earlier stars exploded. There would be no life, because life requires the cycling of matter through death and decomposition. There would be no evolution, no complexity, no consciousness, because all of those things are downstream consequences of impermanence. Death is not the enemy of meaning. Death is the engine of it. Sagan saw this clearly. He saw that the universe is not indifferent to us in the way a machine is indifferent. It is indifferent in the way a river is indifferent to the fish that swim in it. The river did not choose to carry them, but it carries them nonetheless, and without it, they would not exist. The structure that enables life is the same structure that ends it. There is no separating these things. To be alive is to be on loan from a cosmos that will reclaim you, as it has always reclaimed everything, and redistribute what you are into what comes next. This is not tragedy. It is participation. Carl Sagan once wrote that we are a way for the cosmos to know itself. That sentence is not a metaphor. It is a description of a specific, unprecedented, improbable event in the history of the universe. Matter organized itself into structures complex enough to observe, model, and wonder at the very processes that produced them. You are not a bystander to the universe. You are a place where the universe briefly became aware of itself, and when you die, that awareness disperses back into the larger system from which it briefly coalesced. Your atoms return to the long conversation the cosmos has been having with itself since the first moments after the Big Bang. Your causal signature continues forward in the lives of everyone and everything you touched. And the particular pattern that was you, unique, irreplaceable, never to occur again in precisely that form, leaves a permanent impression on the structure of what came next. You will not remember any of this, but the universe will carry it forward regardless. That is not loss. That is legacy at the only scale that actually holds. If you watched this far, you are not the kind of person who settles for easy answers. You are the kind of person who wants to understand reality, not just the surface of it, but the structure underneath. The rules that operate whether or not we acknowledge them. The invisible laws that govern matter, time, meaning, and what it means to exist at all. That is exactly what this channel is for, and it will be here every week, waiting for the questions most people are afraid to ask.